Hello, my name is Sue Owen and I'm coming to you from Destiny. It's a huge privilege to be able to share with you. And during these few sessions, I'm going to be telling you some true stories, stories of faith. I've titled it Lessons in Faith because as we've pioneered the churches over many years, served God and moved about quite a bit, we've had challenges and things that have made life quite difficult at times, but the Lord has really been faithful and He's taught us many things in faith, and this is why I'm here today. It's just a joy to be with you. Because God's love is everlasting, and He said He'd never leave us. We've chosen to serve Him and believe for great things. But at one point it was very tough as a tragedy struck when we were quite newly married. And I recall we were trying for a family, as most young folks are. God was so good to us, God helped us, but it took a year for me to conceive, and that felt like a long time. During those months, we were very excited, we planned, we did a lot of study, we were in Bible school at the time, getting ready to pioneer churches and do the work that we do today. I was full term, and they said, "You'll be going into labour very soon, Mrs. Owen." And I recall being very excited about that. But within a day, the baby had gone quiet. And as I went to the hospital, they told us that the heartbeat was lost. We'd lost this baby, he'd died. The shock set in, we wondered what had happened. We didn't want to run away, but we didn't want them to induce either, because that would have taken it out of our hands and we'd have lost the opportunity to pray in this situation for this dear baby that we'd waited for. We went home, and for 5 long days we prayed, asking God for a miracle, and we trusted and we believed and we rallied with many scriptures, and people were fasting for us. It was a time of great support from the church. The day for delivery came and I went into labour just naturally. And I remember Andrew driving the car ever so fast. I think we were just so nervous. But you know, when the baby was born, we called him Samuel. And he hadn't kicked and he hadn't moved and there was no change. But the grace of God filled that place, and we knew that He was with us. And we knew that this wasn't the end, even though we felt quite stunned by the bolt out of the blue that had hit us. And it had touched our hearts very deeply, as you can imagine. We let go of the baby, we went home, and we prayed again, but prayers of a different type. We were asking God to help us. We were asking God to make us strong. We were asking God to give us peace, to re-energize our faith, to give us maybe not answers as to why, but maybe understanding as to what was this that came out of nowhere to try and destroy us. I remember having to watch out for the words that people shared with me. Someone asked me, what happened? What went on? Why did it happen? And the doctors had never come up with any answer. They did tests, they checked, but they never had any reason. And we had no rhyme for it either. I recall thinking at that point, wow, that person really loves me, to be so interested. And they were a leader with authority, a kindly, good man. But you know what? I learned a lesson right there. Not to let someone's love me to death. Because what happened in those following weeks was that my mind went back into what had happened. Why did it happen? How did it happen? What could we do to prevent it? But we were desperately wanting another baby. We knew the baby wouldn't take the place of Samuel, but we wanted another baby. And within 3 months I'd conceived, and there I was carrying this new child. During those following weeks, I remember realizing I needed to do a study, because my heart was not just feeling down and excited. I realized I was becoming quite negative. About 12, maybe 15 weeks in, I recall feeling so worried. I was concerned that I would create a catastrophe. I was concerned that my mindset, my thought life, my viewpoint, my approach to everything that was happening would create another tragedy. And I realized that I'd made a big mistake. I said, "Father, what have I done that's wrong here? Where did I go wrong?" And He said, "Well, actually, you heard wrong. You did allow someone to love you to death, caused you to look at the problem and not at the promise. Caused me to look at maybe the reasons rather than trusting in God for the future. And while I was carrying this baby number 2, I realized I had to do some work very quickly. I took time to wait before God, and the Lord was so gracious to me because I poured out my heart, and I wept and I prayed and I cried. I needed some peace and quiet when Andrew was out, because I knew that this was an answer only God could give. It wasn't right for me to expect all the answers to come from Andrew. And as I went to the Lord that night and prayed and asked him to speak to me, he gave me kind of a prophecy. And that would be words coming from heaven to feed and nurture and uplift my heart again. And the words that God gave me was that he knew this was going to happen and that he chose not to stop it. But he also said to me, the enemy thought he would finish us off at that point, and that he would cause us to just cave in, to give up, to not have any faith again in the same tenacious way that we'd had as young people, as teenagers, as those going out to get life. He said the enemy thought he'd got us and that we'd never get back up again, especially me, being the carrier and the one that experienced the pregnancy and the birth. But he said, I chose not to stop this, but I actually knew it wouldn't finish you off, but it would make you strong. And the Lord gave me so many wonderful promises at that point. He said he would never leave me. He said that he would build me and he would make me and he would surround me and he would keep me. Totally built my heart up just right there and then when I was being really open with him in private. I realized at that point that I needed to guard the things I looked at, to guard the things that I would read, to guard the conversations I would be having. And he gave me some scriptures. And in Isaiah 41 and verse 10 it says, so do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. We were due to go to a Christian camp quite soon, and I really was not looking forward to that, because I remembered the fact that they were all excited about the baby coming last year. And now I had to start all over again and explain to them, well, actually that baby went to be with the Lord, and now I'm pregnant again. And it felt a really awkward situation to be in when everybody was on a Christian camp wanting to have a great, happy time. You would feel maybe that you were spoiling their fun and that they would start to walk around a little bit carefully and not know what to say. And some people wouldn't know if they should cry with you or if they should come and pray for you. And I wasn't looking forward to that. So I went into the Word in obedience, really, to study joy and to study strength. I went into the Word to get answers that would make a difference for my approach to the people that I was due to meet, and also especially make a difference for myself in the way I was approaching life right there and then. Another scripture God gave me was in Psalm 118, and it's actually the pivotal verse in the Bible, would you believe? It's the very central verse in the Bible. It's in verses 8 and 9. It says, it is better to trust and take refuge in the Lord than to put confidence in man. It is better to trust and take refuge in the Lord than to put confidence in princes. You see, even though I'd been through a dip in my emotions, and clearly your chemistry changes, clearly your body needs to get well. Now that I was pregnant again, I wanted to be strong in the Word, but I also wanted to be very practical when it comes to medical things. I used to be a nurse. Many years ago, I did my training down in Yorkshire, and I became a staff nurse. And I recognize and value so much what people can do for you in the hospitals and how much they care for you. And I'd always said, if I needed to go get a quick check, I would go along and let them just take a look at this new baby that we were expecting. I remember thinking in different seasons, it's not very good to shadow box, because sometimes we can think something's going wrong and we start to worry and we start to flap, and people can go for weeks and months doing that, and it's not really healthy. It's like boxing into thin air. You don't really know what's going on. You don't know who your enemy is or if you should even be having this fight like this today. So one morning, would you believe, during this second pregnancy, I was about 28 weeks, I think. This baby, this second baby, was very quiet. This baby was very still. This baby wasn't moving. And I kind of rolled around a bit in bed in the morning before I got up and tried to see if I could just feel a nudge or a kick, and nothing was happening. And so I waited a little while and I thought, I'll just go to the doctor and let them look, and then I can carry on with the things I've got to do today. I went to the doctors. Andrew was doing an outreach with a GO team, gospel outreach team, we'd call that, yeah? And he dropped me off at the doctor's because I said, I'd just really like to go for a quick checkup. When I was there, I had to wait probably 40 minutes. Still nothing happening. Still no movement. Still nothing to feel. When I went into the doctor's surgery, as you do, he just said, I'll take a listen and I'll take a look, and we'll just be able to carry on with the day, won't we? But do you know what happened when I was in the doctor's surgery that day? And this doctor would be probably in his 50s, 60s. He wasn't a newbie, he wasn't fresh in there and nervous, but he was an established GP. I watched his face. I watched him change colour. I watched him write a note. He'd put the belt on, he'd listened with his stethoscope, he'd felt with his hands, and I watched him write a letter. I understood the abbreviations. He'd basically put no fetal movement felt, no fetal heart heard. Now, the flood of memory that I'd been through before with Samuel just swamped my mind. I watched the doctor as he panicked. He started to hyperventilate and shake. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is a bit serious. Something's going on here. I think I better just take stock of where I'm at and what should I do. He gave me the note. He said, I think you should go to hospital right now. I got myself ready and I went outside. Andrew was due back in maybe half an hour. And I stood in the street and I prayed. You can imagine I prayed. The scriptures that I'd been finding during my search for strength, the verses that had blessed me when I'd looked, how do I lift up my heart and stay in joy? The joy of the Lord is your strength, it says in Nehemiah. I was thinking of all of those scriptures right there in the street while I was standing there. I prayed and I knew I had a choice to make. I could either just collapse and cave in, or I could continue to trust God. I didn't have anybody by my side at that second. I didn't have anybody to come and say otherwise. I just had what the doctor had given me, and I also only had what my body was trying to tell me. Pretty negative situation, don't you agree? But you know, right there in the street, I made the choice not to cave in. I prophesied over this child. I prophesied strength again. I brought to my remembrance all the verses that God had given me. And I remembered that it says in Psalm 68 and verses 19 and 28, blessed be the Lord who bears our burdens and carries us day by day, even the God who is our salvation. Your God has commanded your strength, your might in his service, and impenetrable hardness to temptation. O God, display your might and strengthen what you have wrought for us. I knew right there that I was tempted to give in. I knew right there that the lessons I'd learned, and I'm going to share a few of those points in a minute or two, some of the lessons I'd learned were about confession, about the company I would keep, about the way I would let the word win in my life. I knew right there I had to be so careful, but I knew he'd commanded my strength. Andrew arrived. I didn't tell him that the doctor had given me a letter. I just said, they want us to go to the hospital. Well, I think he might have picked up in my tone of voice and something, and he rushed like mad. And I think the baby was about to be born in the car just because of the panic. But you know, when I got to the hospital, they saw the note. They took us into the side room. If you've ever been in that situation, you know just what that feels like. It's a bit daunting. They kind of want to move you away to keep it private in case something's not too great. I'd been there before. They took us into the side room. All these verses are going around in my heart. I'd only said to Andrew, we need a quick checkup. Please don't worry, but I could see he was concerned. They put the strap on, they listened in. Do you know what? The baby's heartbeat was racing. Racing. He was as happy as Larry. He was just fast asleep, that's all. But right there and then, I'd had a real lesson in faith. Right there that morning, 28 weeks into the second pregnancy, I'd had a real lesson in faith. I want to share some of the lessons that I went through with you. That if you are facing different things and you're not sure how to cope with the challenge right there when you're in it, because we don't have a leader by our side all the time. We don't maybe always have another Christian friend. Maybe the people talking to us are very negative or so protective that their love is squeezing the life out of us. I want to share some of these lessons with you. Thank God Josh was born well and able, healthy, bright, beautiful, vigorous. He was born exactly a year after our first baby, but these are some of the lessons I learned. And I want to let you know, I'm going to pray for you before I finish this teaching, this sharing time. I'm just going to take the opportunity, if I may, if you're willing, for me to pray for you too. But some of the lessons that I learned were, let's reject the word of an expert. Let's not always listen to our body if it's contrary to what the word tells us. You know that verse there? In Psalm 118, it's better to trust in the Lord than to trust in men. It's better to trust in the Lord than to trust in princes. It doesn't say you don't trust in people and you don't trust in princes or experts, but it's actually given us the choice. It's better to trust the Lord. What would you rather? I would rather say, Father, you're sovereign in my life. Father, I'm living for you and I'm serving you. Father, I love you. I asked Jesus into my life just so that I could be close to you. So I'm trusting you over and above what these people are trying to tell me. I had to learn to reject the word of an expert. I had to learn, folks, to dig deep into the word for faith, for courage, and for strength. When you're talking to your auntie, when that colleague has been through something that you may be feeling like you're about to face, it could be financial, it could be sickness, it could be relational. Do you want their words to paint your picture? Or are you wanting to go back to the word of God, the true giver of faith, where it begins and where it ends? He says he'll polish it. He's the author and the perfecter of our faith. Don't we want to just go back into that word to find something that will lift us up? I learned another thing, which was not to read magazines. Can you believe that? I learned not to read magazines, to listen to radio shows or watch TV programs. They could have fed my curiosity. They could have really given me some answers at that time. But you know what? It was amazing, the number of groups that were discussing and debating stillbirths during that season. And the temptation was everywhere to go and have a look, to take a read, to stop back and listen. And I had to be so disciplined not to do that. I felt the Lord say, don't go there, don't go there. Look to the future, come into the Word, spend time with me, use the power of praise. So I took responsibility for myself. Sometimes we could imagine that other people are supposed to take care of us and sort it out. I'm a leader, but I still had to take responsibility for me. I couldn't expect Andrew to fix me. I couldn't expect our pastors to fix me. I needed to do my own work and my own discipline. I often think of this, that when we need faith, we could see our mind like an airport runway. And as you would see airplanes landing in an airport over and over, and they're coming and they're going and they're coming and they're going. But your mind could almost be seen like an airport runway, and we have to choose whether that plane or that statement or that word of comfort or something negative, do we let it land or do we send it on its way? Do we allow it space to take root, or do we just say, actually, you don't belong, you're going, I don't want you? I had to really watch and take responsibility for my thought life. And I treated my mind and my thought life like an airport runway. And I would not just send some of the negatives packing, I would replace them with the truth of God. And for you, only you know what the truth of God is for you. We speak of the word as being a sword, and you need to get that sword ready. And the sword is no use to you if it's still just hidden away in the pages of the book, the Bible. It's something you're supposed to use. It's not a fluffy wand, it's a sword. And when we get a challenge, we need to say, right, I'm going to find the promise that fits the problem right now. And I'm going to wield my sword so that when the enemy comes with his negatives, and sometimes he can come in the face of a friend, but we've to look behind them. It's not their fault. We don't get upset with people. We don't go for people. We see the enemy behind what they're trying to bring to us, and we just decide, okay, that's fine, or no, it's not fine. It's not landing into my mindset. It's not taking root. I'm not going to give it some space or time. I just want to encourage you, take responsibility for yourself. It takes practice, you know, because if you've been brought up with a very practical family or a very a theoretical viewpoint where it's got to be theories and viewpoints and opinions, you have to go into faith mode, which sometimes you can't see. You know, when I was in that doctor's surgery that day, all I could see was what the doctor had written, and all I could see was what my tummy was not showing, which was no movement whatsoever. And I had to start seeing with the eye of faith. We have to learn to take responsibility. We have weapons for our warfare. There is a verse, and I'll tell you the scripture in a second. It's 2 Corinthians 10, verses 4 and 5. It says this, "For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God for pulling down strongholds, casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought into captivity, into the obedience of Christ." You have to rein it in. You have to choose, I'm going to pull this in. I will not go down that negative pathway again. Vince Lombardi said, it's not whether you get knocked down, it's whether you get back up. How true is that? I would love to say a word of prayer for you, if I may, because I'm so concerned about the way that we handle this thing called faith. And you may have been hit by a tragedy. It may have just knocked you sideways and you felt the enemy having a go at your faith life and your testimony at work, or your words and encouragements to your family to trust and love the Lord that you've come to know. And now this tragedy, and what are you supposed to say? You know, God needs no defender. In fact, he wants to defend you. You may have had a few losses, even a number of deep disappointments. My heart goes out to you. God bless you. Or you may feel that you're in a battle that's continuous and tiresome. May the Lord command your strength. May he do wonders for you. I'm just going to stand for a few seconds and pray, if I may. And if you feel that this is really making sense to you and you need help in these areas with your confession, areas with the company that you keep. Do you know, some people that loved me a lot, I had to distance myself just a little bit from them so that they wouldn't put on to me their worry. I couldn't cut some people off because some of them were family, but I did need to know how to put a hedge of protection around my thinking. I did need to know how to sift through whether I wanted their words to land in my mindset, you know, the airfield that I just described to you. I had to be very careful the types of conversations I got involved with. I had to be careful with regards to magazines. I had to be careful with the scriptures. That, you know what, I didn't just read it and then forget. If it made a difference in my manner that day, in my mood, if I dare go there, I would write that down and I would make sure it was memorable. I would make sure I had it to hand. But you know what? I want to pray for you right now. I want to be a practical helper, someone that will stand with you. If I was in the room with you, I'd hold your hand. Because you know what? These things are not easy to face. These things are not easy to deal with, especially if you're in leadership and you're trying to live with strength in front of others. But come on, let me pray. May the Lord command your strength, just as we read there in Psalm 68. May the Holy Spirit help you to steward well the wisdom that you've asked him for. When you ask the Lord for wisdom, he's going to give it to you. You have to read the word. May the Lord help you read his word and shy away from the television and shy away from those reports that the doctors want to put in front of you or the financial advisors want to give you. May you find the word doing its work for you. May he increase your ability to guard the peace that he's given. You know, we find our peace in knowing that he said, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. How wonderful is that? Because sometimes you're far away from everybody else, but when you know he's with you, where else could you or would you want to be? God is your strength. He wants to be with you in it. He doesn't want you to go get well and then come back and say, I've come through. He wants to grab you by the hand or even put his arms around you and walk with you through these journeys of growing up, growing in faith, coming through, getting well, becoming more bold, standing in strength. So may he give you the ability to guard the peace of knowing that Christ is with you. You'll grow that as you wait on him. You'll grow that as you spend time with him. You'll grow that as you allow him to talk to you. You empty your own mind of your mindset, your viewpoint, your opinion, the words you've heard. You empty those out and you come to him for answers. And may the Lord increase your faith as you go to that word in expectation. Do you know there is a promise for every problem? I pray that you find what you need. The Lord has got more than enough for you. We went through those trials many, many years ago. We've 5 boys, you know, from 32 down to 20 years of age. Our first baby would be 33 right now. And I just know that the Lord is with you and he's got the most amazing things to help you come through. It's been a joy to share with you. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Sue. And I just wanted to come to share with you from the Destiny Network, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. God bless you.